We have lots to talk about in today, including several trade rumors involving teams like the Pittsburgh Penguins. They are wide open for business. We're talking about a bunch of players, including Erik Karlsson. Plus, we're looking at teams like the Minnesota Wild, the Philadelphia Flyers, the Edmonton Oilers, and the Buffalo Sabres. Plus, we have news from the NHL waiver wire. Well, we also have some more big milestones coming up that we're going to discuss. Several injury and roster move updates as well, and some big updates as well regarding the Four Nation Face-Off tournament. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to talk about here today. Let's get started first with news from the NHL waiver wire and a bunch of injury and roster updates. For the waiver wire news today, the Colorado Avalanche have placed winger Chris Wagner on waivers. Of course, he's been recalled and played a bunch of games with the Avalanche because of their injury situation. They've had a lot of players out, but they are scheduled to get a bunch of guys back, including 3 forwards coming up here for their next game this weekend, and Wagner will have to return to the minors. The Avalanche at this point are expecting Miles Wood, Jonathan Drouin, and Val Nichushkin all to be back for tomorrow's game. So that's going to be an absolutely huge boost for them. They've been playing well as of late after a slow start. The Avalanche have kind of found their game, and goaltending's been better. They've been scoring at a higher clip, and Rantanen, McKinnon, McCarr, those guys have been doing extremely well, and the team's been doing a lot better. You add all this into the mix, and well, suddenly they could make things very interesting in the Central Division. Of course, the Winnipeg Jets are off to a historically good start, and then the Minnesota Wild are certainly not too far behind and doing a lot better than expected as well. So certainly going to make things interesting here as the Avalanche move along. But big roster changes coming for the Avalanche, which will kind of be a bit of a bummer for Wagner, but he'll have to go back down to the NHL or go through the waiver wire and go back to the AHL. Some big milestones come last night. One was honored last night, and then we got some more big ones coming up over the next day or two. Of course, last night we saw the Maple Leafs and defenseman Oliver Ekman-Larsson skate in game number 1,000. Yesterday we touched on a little bit on his career, just kind of looking ahead to the milestone. Of course, now that you do have to officially make it there, play at the game, which he did do, so that's now official. I know the team was quite, on board. They all had OEL 1K hats and T-shirts, and they're certainly making a big deal about it, and he'll be honored in their next game, I'm sure. But Ekman-Larsson reached a big milestone. We saw the Penguins honor longtime star player of Evgeny Malkin for 500 goals, and a couple of big milestones coming up. One could happen tonight. Connor McDavid, of course, the Oilers play host to the Nashville Predators tonight, and Connor McDavid's looking for .1000. He currently sits on 999. He would become the 4th fastest player in NHL history to hit that massive milestone. A lot of players would love to have a shot at hitting that and play twice as long as McDavid did, never come close. That's just how strong of a career he's had. Of course, Sidney Crosby also looking for goal number 600, so that'll be coming up soon. Hopefully, next game that Crosby plays, we'll hopefully see that over the course of the weekend here as well. A bunch of other injury updates and roster moves around the league. We talked yesterday about how the Bruins were going to be without defenseman Hampus Lindholm for a little while. There was some more speculation and information coming out around what the injury is, and it sounds like it's a fractured kneecap. That could be a long-term injury, because I know they listed him, I believe, as week to week, but they said it could be several weeks. It's hard to say. So that's certainly not a fun injury. It is a big recovery. So Lindholm will likely be out for a while. Of course, every fracture is a little bit different as well, so we'll have to wait and see, but not something he's going to be back with in a few days, that's for sure. The Bruins have recalled Patrick Brown. They also already had a defenseman brought up before, but they've called Patrick Brown back up today as well. In Edmonton, of course, as I mentioned, they do battle the Predators tonight. It would have been the first time for Arvidsson to play his old team as an Oiler. Of course, he already had an opportunity with the Los Angeles Kings, but Arvidsson will not be in the lineup tonight for the Edmonton Oilers. He is dealing with a minor injury and will be out of action for this evening. The Buffalo Sabres have also concluded that Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen and Tage Thompson, who are both considered day-to-day, will not be in the lineup tonight as well. Dennis Gilbert will be going in on the blue line. In Vancouver, of course, they've had a lot of ups and downs with players going back and forth, probably for cap purposes, but they have recalled Atu Ratu and Lekkerimäki. This time, Baines did not get the recall, and that's because they had another player coming back from injured reserve. It'll be the NHL season debut for Dakota Joshua, of course, who ended up with a pretty serious health scare that was dealt with pretty swiftly in the offseason, which has caused him to miss the beginning of the year here. But obviously, Joshua is back and healthy and ready to jump back into action. So it'll be his first game of the season for the Vancouver Canucks. Be curious to see how they juggle their lineup. I know he played a lot on the third line last year. Him and Connor Garland were usually the wingers and had pretty good chemistry there. So we'll see how things work out with Vancouver. With Joshua's return in Tampa, they're going to be without Braden Point for the evening. Sounds like it might be a longer-term injury to keep him out for a bit, but we don't really know. The Lightning have not confirmed that, just that he will not be in the lineup tonight. In Minnesota, they're going to be without Jonas Brodin tonight. He is considered day-to-day. The Columbus Blue Jackets today also activated Gavin Brindley. He's been out of action for some time and has been sent down to the American Hockey League. And in Pittsburgh, they've recalled forwards Matt Nieto and Vasily Ponomarev as well. So they'll have a chance to get into some action. Of course, with the trade of Lars Eller, that freed up a roster spot as well. So lots of updates around the league when it comes to roster spots in that front. One kind of rumor that's been floating around is the future of Vladislav Gavrikov with the Los Angeles Kings. In Elliot Friedman's latest 32 Thoughts column, the latest intel around Gavrikov in LA is that he believes the Kings are going to be making a strong effort to re-sign him and keep him in Los Angeles. Of course, he would be one of the more prominent UFA defensemen should he not get a contract done and hit the open market this coming offseason, of course. But Gavrikov has played big minutes for LA lately, especially in Drew Doughty's absence. And then, of course, like I said, he went there on a shorter-term contract after being acquired from the Blue Jackets. He only signed for a couple years. It wasn't quite clear what the long-term plan was there for Gavrikov, but right now indications are he's likely staying. But again, until they get through the negotiation phase and get the contract completed, you can't be 100% sure. But that's the latest intel on that situation. Utah, of course, we know there was a lot of speculation that their jerseys for fans would not be available to be purchased until the early part of 2025. That's not going to be the case. The Utah Hockey Club's original Season 1 jerseys will be available for sale this coming Friday. So that is obviously a fair bit sooner and a fair bit ahead of schedule. So that's certainly good to see. I'm sure the fans in Utah are absolutely jonesing to get some of their jerseys and merch there. So we know they've been very supportive of the hockey club. Certainly had a up and down season so far, but I think they're pretty well for the most part where a lot of people thought they would be. Game over 500. They're not in a playoff spot, but they're in the mix for a wild card spot. They're right there. I know I've seen some people questioning whether or not head coach Andre Tourigny would be on the hot seat because of maybe expectations being a little higher. I don't think that's the case at all. I think Utah, as a club overall with ownership and as the GM Bill Armstrong expected them to kind of be where they are. I mean, obviously, compared to what they were as the Arizona Coyotes, they've taken some steps forward. They're certainly playing better. They've obviously spent more money, brought in some higher end talent, and this team and the players, you can tell, absolutely loves and adores Andre Tourigny. And they're listening to Craig Morgan, the beat writer for Utah, of course, former Coyotes reporter who's followed the team to Utah, has confirmed this in a recent update, which is no big surprise to me. I know from what I've seen, Tourigny is a beloved coach there. They absolutely love what he brings. Ownership, the GM, really respect him as well. So I don't think there's any pressure there if the team slips a little bit or doesn't make the playoffs this year that he'd be on the hot seat. If there is a coach right now that's on the hot seat, I'd have to say that the main one that comes to mind, well, there's two really, would be Jim Montgomery in Boston and Mike Sullivan in Pittsburgh. I would think that the pressure might even be higher in Boston because the expectations were higher. That's just a gut feeling on my part. So I don't know if we're going to see, obviously a change. I think it'll depend. I think they're going to, take it slow here. Wouldn't be shocked if I found out that Cam Neely and Don Sweeney were out kind of scouring the market, looking at what other options could be if they decide to make a change. Obviously, right now, the Bruins are on a bit of a road trip, and if they do have, a bad showing or a couple consecutive losses or something where they don't bounce back, then I would think that as each one of those go by, the odds increase that something could happen. I know their last game against the Blues didn't start good. They finally changed the trend that they've been having bad third periods, and they had a much better third period. They didn't have a great first 40 minutes, and in the third period to come back, they were down 2-0 and managed to tie up the game and get the winner as well late in the third. So obviously Boston is, like I said, a high pressure place right now. We will see. I think there's a lot of pressure on Montgomery. I don't think he's like a firing is imminent or anything, but if we happen to see another 2-3 losses in a row or something like that, I would suspect that we could see a knee-jerk reaction. That wouldn't shock me at all. In Pittsburgh, I don't really know what Kyle Dubas and the Fenway Group are thinking there. I think it's fair to say that it's a lot of the issues are on the roster because of the moves the management has made or not been able to make. So I don't know that it's really Sullivan's fault, but at the same time, he has been there a long time, and maybe there's an argument that it's time for a fresh voice. So I don't know how that goes. Obviously, Sullivan knows the core guys have been there a long time extremely well. He's been there for, I think it's going on 9 years now. So, I mean, certainly, and it's not Letang, it's not Malkin, it's not Crosby. These guys are not the problem. They're still playing pretty well. It's a lot of the other supporting cast. So we will see. But if there's any coaches on the hot seat, I would think those are the two names that are probably most likely there. I know there's some talk from Pierre LeBrun that some of the foreign nation face-off teams, which are rumored to be Canada and the U.S., we don't know a lot 100%, lobbied the NHL and the NHLPA to expand their rosters from 23 to 25. A couple of concerns, I guess, going into the tournament and naming the rosters here coming up in the early part of December was, for one, obviously there's going to be good players that don't make this team and end up getting cut. And, at this point, they're going to have difficult conversations saying, we aren't making you on the team, but can you kind of keep your schedule clear? If there's an injury or something, you're kind of one of the players that are on standby that we'd like to bring in as a replacement if need be. I mean, for some players, they're not going to like that. You're going to get different reactions for players that are, on that situation. Of course, it probably depends on where they're at in their careers, if they've been on Team Canada before and what have you, right? I mean, everybody's going to react differently. So because of that, they were hoping they would let them just have 25 players. So that way, if they do have a couple of injuries, they don't automatically need to add new players. Or if they do, they would be players that would be kind of further down the list and, might not be so sensitive to being cut or, holding a vacation opportunity hostage, basically waiting to see if they're going to be playing or not. But the offer that was put forth by those clubs and lobbied against the league and the PA were firmly rejected. So 23-man rosters is all they're going to be able to get. Now, amongst all the rumors around the league today, I know one team is in Philadelphia is getting a lot of attention. I know Anthony DeMarco, who has worked for a variety of outlets, but DeMarco covers the Flyers, not exclusively, but it seems to be where his greatest sources and intel are. He was saying online today that the Minnesota Wild are a team to watch when it comes to some of the Flyers players. There's a lot of speculation that they are very keen on Joel Farabee and Bobby Brink. Farabee especially. But with Farabee, they really like the player. They feel he'd be a great fit in Minnesota. But I do think there's some concern over the contract, is basically what DeMarco's comments were. So hard to say if a trade would materialize, but we've heard since the summer that the Flyers would consider moving Joel Farabee, as much as he was, considered a high-end winger and certainly somebody who could be a long-term solution piece there with the Flyers. I think, now that where he's at in his career, a little bit older, I think they're willing to move on if they can get the right deal. I don't think they're in a hurry to move him, though, so we will see. But Minnesota is certainly having a better than expected start to the season. I would not be shocking if Billy Guerin finds ways to try to add to this roster as a reward going deeper into the season and into the Western Conference playoffs. And those are certainly some players that would make sense, that would be on their radar. So we'll see what happens. Of course, Farabee, another product of the United States national team program, who Minnesota team seems to monitor a lot of those players and have done well drafting and bringing in players that have that kind of history there. So we'll see. Obviously, Farabee's been mentioned in the rumor mill numerous times. It's been a little while. At one point, the Flyers and Sabres were believed to be having some conversations. So we can add Minnesota into that mix there for teams that have lots of interest. I know when it comes to the Sabres, I know there was reports from a variety of insiders that we've heard, including Sarah Valley and Friedman, saying that, and Darren Dreger for that matter, add all three of them into the mix, have all covered the Sabres in some capacity here in the last 24 to 48 hours, saying that Kevin Adams is one of the more active GMs around the NHL right now, having tons of conversations, and they're looking to make some potential changes. And of course, they don't want to sacrifice the future too much, and they don't want to sacrifice a young piece off their roster that's going to put up, potentially be there for a long time. Bo Byram's name has been out there in the rumor mill for sure. Dreger had mentioned that, as much as his name has been out there, that there's probably some willingness to move him, but it's going to take a significant offer and like a mind-blowing trade that they feel like they can't refuse in order to make that happen though. So, you might hear his name. It's getting some play in the rumor mill, but it's more than anything. Sometimes the names come up because other teams are interested. It doesn't mean they're going to be interested to pay the asking price for the team that currently has the player. And that sounds like it might be a case right now. But of course, we know Kevin Adams had been linked to, considering a shakeup of the core. We'd heard Dylan Cousins' name out there before. Like I said, obviously Byram's name has been out there. But more than anything, it sounds like Adams wants to add to the roster, not necessarily subtract an NHL player. I think for Byram or Cousins to be included, it would have to be a stud player that they just could not refuse, right? Not saying it's impossible, it's just a lot less likely. So the more likely scenarios that the Sabres would like to add a player who can help them be better and be deeper right now. And obviously, over time, they can use some of their picks and prospects and younger players that are not having an immediate spot on a roster to kind of satisfy any trade needs. So, again, the Sabres are very much in the mix. Lots of conversations are being had, and just a matter of time if they find the deal that they might be looking for or not. Certainly Mackenzie Blackwood generated a lot of buzz as well recently with a massive shutout for the San Jose Sharks. I know he's generated some buzz in the trade rumor mill in the last couple of days since that performance as well, leading many NHL reporters and insiders to suggest that, he's a pending unrestricted free agent. There's lots of teams looking for help between the pipes, that he could be a very interesting and attractive option to teams leading into this deadline. And, to be honest, a team that kind of comes to mind would be the Colorado Avalanche. To some degree, the Edmonton Oilers, if they really want to, if they would like to upgrade on Pickard or really give Skinner more of a competition for the net. But obviously the Avalanche are probably a more pressing team. Goaltending has been better lately, but there is a lot of talk that they have had, conversations and kind of meetings around some goalies that might be able to help them out. So it sounds like he is kind of on their radar, and we'll have to wait and see how things work out. But for a goalie who's been able to stay healthy last year and this year and playing more and getting, not every night's not a superstar status, but considering with the team in front of him, considering what he's been doing, it seems like a really good possibility that we could see Blackwood moved. I mean, we know they traded for Yaroslav Askarov and needs a path to the NHL for next year. So there's a good chance that Blackwood and Vanacek both won't be back. One will likely get moved. They might try re-signing one of them, or they may go in a completely different direction. But at the end of the day, we'll see what happens there. And in Pittsburgh, lots of talk. Of course, we saw the Lars Eller trade, and the talk around the NHL really is that the Penguins are wide open for business. I know Josh Yohe of The Athletic made comments about Erik Karlsson, and Erik Karlsson also had kind of got ripped a little bit by Johan Garpenlov, who used to be the Swedish national team's general manager, saying that he wouldn't have put him on the team for the Four Nation Faceoff. And of course, Karlsson was one of the first 6 players that were confirmed. Essentially, talking about how poor his defensive play has been. And the Athletic article kind of says that the Penguins remain concerned about Karlsson's game. And there's also some talk with Karlsson talking to the media, kind of saying that he thinks he's been playing okay, that's not going over well internally in Pittsburgh as well, with the management team, above them, kind of, hearing this and evaluating this and be like, yeah, no, that's not really the case with you. So I'm not sure what will be said or done about it. But at the end of the day, the Penguins, who are believed to be very much in play here, suddenly have a lot of pressure on them and certainly have a lot of options here with their goaltending not holding up. Of course, we know the defense hasn't been great with a lot of giveaways. Erik Karlsson leads the NHL in giveaways right now, and they've even had times scoring too. So Erik Karlsson, and we talked the other night about, is it reasonable to think that maybe he could return to what would be considered home for him in the NHL, which is the Ottawa Senators. And most people agreed that as much as the nostalgia kicks in, and maybe they could find a spot for him, but it would be difficult to do right now, given his contract and given where they are at as a team. Does it make the most sense? And it's hard to really answer yes to any of that, although, like I said, a lot of fans, from a nostalgia perspective, would probably like to see him come back, but not now. It just doesn't make sense, I don't think, from a lot of other standpoints. But Karlsson's very much in play, I think, considering that that's not really worked out. Like I said, not only is it a case of about them being, not thrilled with his comments on his own play, thinking that he's maybe full of himself a little bit, but also kind of saying that, that they're obviously frustrated with the disconnect between Karlsson, and the team, and leading the team in giveaways is not a good place to be. Obviously, they said he has a little bit of a nonchalant type attitude, and just, I think they'd like to see a little bit more care on the defensive side of the puck, and a little bit more care onto how he's going about things. But he's certainly, I think, a player. He would have to agree to it, but obviously that's why it made sense to bring up Ottawa, because I know that's a team he would go to. But obviously for him to get moved, he's going to have to be involved and be okay with it. Lots to talk about Marcus Pettersson maybe being connected to the Edmonton Oilers. We know they're looking for a top four defenseman, so there is talk there. Pettersson had previously been linked to the Canucks. I'm not sure where things stand on that front. We also heard about some other players like a Drew O'Connor maybe being available too. So I honestly think we're going to probably see multiple bottom six or bottom pair defensemen for the Penguins likely end up in this deal. Not a given, of course, because certainly, they're not going to move everybody. They're not going to, get a trade return that they want on all of these situations either. But, I think frustration's growing. Something has to give. Is it a coaching change? Is it a big trade? Would Karlsson agree to play ball and move on? You have to wonder, really, would they retain some more money to knock that cap hit down even further? I think they might need to kind of move the asset along, but certainly, I think they're concerned. Obviously, having him be, such a, like I said, nonchalant, just wondering, does he really care enough on the defensive side of the puck to really put that effort in? So we'll have to wait and see how things play out. But the Penguins are very much open for business. Karlsson, Pettersson, O'Connor. I'd throw Tristan Jarry in there. I'd throw Michael Bunting in there. They're all possible names that we could see moved. But certainly, Dubas will take his time and make sure he gets it all right here. So let me know what your thoughts are on all of today's news and rumors down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.